Can you speak a little bit about Pratyahara?
Pratyahara. Pratyahara. Pratyahara is the fifth limb of yoga. Patanjali mentions 8 limbs, being yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Morals and ethics, control of the body, control of the breath, pratyahara, which means isolation of the senses, concentration, meditation, and samadhi. So your question is about the fifth limb of yoga, the withdrawal of the senses. This fifth limb of yoga is what marks the difference, the movement between yoga, which is focusing on the outer aspects of our being, into yoga which focuses on the inner aspects of our being. Okay? And this is the fifth stage. We were talking about morals and ethics, it's our conduct in the world, the asana, how to hold the body, and pranayama, how to hold the breath. And then the next stages after pratyahara is how to concentrate the mind, how to meditate, and how to go into samadhi. So pratyahara. In the Indian tradition, when they speak about pratyahara, they use a metaphor. And they use the metaphor of the turtle. They say that we need to withdraw our senses from the world in the same way that a turtle draws its limbs into its body. Okay? By withdrawing the senses from the world, we bring ourselves inside. Okay? We move from the outer to the inner. And this is the whole process of yoga. We try to move from what is outside to what is inside, to what is more inside, until we reach who we really are, which is in the center of our being. Now, the outer world is very distracting. Okay? And if we're trying to feel something deep inside of us, if anything happens around us, it kind of takes our attention. So this is pratyahara. We bring the attention inside. Now, how to do pratyahara? Pratyahara means withdrawal of the senses. What senses do we have? What are the senses? The senses is what basically connects me to the outer world. Now, what senses do we have? We have sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. These are the 5 main senses. Out of these, sight is the most important one. About 80% of all the information going into our head comes from sight. Another 15% comes from hearing, and the rest 5% is mainly touch. So we need to find a way to withdraw these senses inside. When we speak about the senses, we can speak about 2 things. We can speak about the sense organ, and we can speak about the sense faculty. Because though our eyes receive the light and transmit the information to our brain, it's actually the brain that sees. Okay? Our first step in pratyahara is to close the sense organs. So that's why in yoga we want, when we meditate, to close the eyes. The moment we close the eyes, 80% of the information we receive from the world disappears. Next is hearing. If we practice in a place of silence, then here again we receive no stimuli. If there are sounds, we can use earplugs. And touch. If we take 2 steps back in the 8 limbs, we have asana. And Patanjali says that asana is that which is comfortable and stable. And here is one secret about the sense of touch. If we don't move the body for a certain amount of time, if we stay stable for a certain amount of time, the sense of touch stops functioning. If we have one constant stimuli happening at the same time for a long period of time, the brain kind of cancels it out. And we stop feeling. And I'm sure you've experienced this, that you sit in meditation and you're not quite sure if you put your hands down here or on your knees, simply because you can't feel your hands anymore. So these are the sense organs. By closing the eyes, by practicing in a silent place, and by not moving, we already take out 99% of all the stimuli that we have. But what does it mean to bring the limbs inside, to bring the senses inside? This has two stages. The first is that we disconnect from the outer world and we bring things to the inner world. And then the deeper aspect is that inside our inner world, we go even deeper into silence. Because when I close my eyes, I still see some lights. And even though my eyes are closed, my inner eyes, my sight, the faculty of sight, can still see things in my imagination. So that would be the next step. But let's stay with the basic steps of the basic aspect of Pratyahara. Okay? How do we bring the senses inside? Now, not the physical aspect, but the faculty. And let's use hearing, because eyesight, we can cover the eyes well enough not to see anything. But hearing, there will always be some kind of sound outside. And if I tell you ignore my voice, it will be impossible for you to ignore my voice. Yeah? Try ignoring something. It's impossible. It just becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. So how do we let go of the outer world? How do we bring our senses inside? Not by ignoring the other world, but by becoming very curious as to what goes on inside of us. Because in the same way that we have sights outside, we have things to see inside. In the same way that we hear sounds outside, there are sounds inside of us and sensations inside of us. Being more interested in what goes on in our inner world than what happens in the outer world. And then people can be walking around you, there can be flashlights going on, and you won't even know it happened, because you will be focused inside. You withdrew your senses inside, and the action that you did was to be curious, to want to know what's going on inside you, to bring your awareness, your attention inside. That would be the first stage of Pratyahara. The second one is that you would become interested in what goes on even deeper inside of you. Because even these inner images, inner sounds, inner sensations, which basically means being curious about how I feel, what I'm thinking, and what my body is, what is happening inside my body. But even that is not our most inner place. Our most inner place is silence. So after we withdrew the senses from the outer world, we withdraw the senses from the inner world into the silence. And again, what does this? The curiosity. When we want to experience, when we want to know, to be inside this silence, then the thoughts will stop being interesting. And the sensations will have passed. But the first stage is the most important one. To be curious what goes on inside of you. And from there things are going to start working themselves out. Because once you start this movement of withdrawing the senses from the outer world, it will continue, going inside until it reaches your core. So this is the fifth limb of yoga. After we deal with putting the body in place, aligning the breath properly, we become very interested, very curious as to what goes on inside. We close the sense organs, and we bring our attention inside.